Okay. Hey, everybody. This is Green Hubs. I'm here with Eli Yoder. His channel is called Eli Yoder on YouTube, and you can go watch his videos. He does a lot of faith-based videos and talks about the Amish a little bit. So, Eli, when did you first start doubting the Amish way of life?
I was about 12 years old when I started doubting the Amish way of life, even though I still had fear at that time that, I might go to hell if I did leave because that's what I was taught. I still started having a lot of doubts at age 12, and it was kind of hard to really overcome those doubts, even though secretly, obviously, I wouldn't tell anybody that I had thoughts of leaving, and that entered all the way into my teenage years, obviously, that I kind of wanted a change of life, that I would be willing to make that transition to a different way of life. But I'd say as early as 12 years old, I really heavily started feeling like that I would want to eliminate myself from that lifestyle, mainly because of some of the things that I was going through that I didn't like. That's a long story in itself, but there was just things happening where I really wanted to eliminate myself from that kind of lifestyle.
Okay, that's neat. So this is one thing that I've always wondered. Were you saved when your dad passed away?
No, I actually was not saved when my father passed away.
Okay. Okay, so what gave you the idea to start a YouTube channel?
Well, that's when I got saved.
Okay.
Saved in 2017, shortly thereafter. I can't remember. It went into 2018 a little bit. I got to start reading the Bible, and really what resulted in starting a YouTube channel to talk about it, and also Facebook. I was on all different platforms talking about it, is because when I actually opened the Bible and started reading it, an English Bible, that is, because in the Amish we had to have the 1522 Martin Luther version. And so when I had an English written Bible, started in the summer of 2017, and I started reading it into 2018, and I was amazed what I was reading. And it got to the point where I had to share it. I had to start talking about how the life I come from, that I left behind, called the Amish, has it all wrong, because I'm not finding anything in this English Bible that supports their way of life, their rules, and everything that I was literally taught. And I realized at that point that I was lied to. And so what I did first was I took the German Bible, because I thought, well, the way I was taught, not everything can be a lie. And so obviously I compared the German Bible with the English Bible, and I did find a lot of good values that the Amish base in the Bible. They're not just all wrong. They have a lot of good values. But as far as the teaching that you must be part of them to get to heaven and making them the only way, I wasn't finding that. I was reading how Jesus was the only way. And so very quickly, I started corralling all of the former Amish in my area together to do Bible studies, to show them, hey, we have literally been lied to in many areas of our life. And that's really when my YouTube channel started taking off, just to start sharing those personal stories.
Did any of those Amish people get saved from your meetings?
Yes. Yeah, we have a pretty large group now, and I'm also involved in other former Amish groups across Ohio and different states, because they also started doing the same thing I did when they realized what the truth was. So, and now those groups are starting to grow all over many various locations. I'm communicating with a couple groups out of Minnesota, Swartz and Trooper groups. So it's amazing to see how, by reading the Bible and sharing those stories on YouTube, how many would reach out. Hey, I'm former Amish too. Thank you for sharing that. That resulted in me searching the scripture, and all at once they find themselves making their own Bible studies, and all at once there's all these people, and it's just growing. It's amazing to see what God's doing.
Yeah, it's great. I like your shirt, by the way.
Thank you.
Do you enjoy making videos?
Yes, I very much enjoy making videos. I enjoy talking about scripture. I do a lot of those. And I don't know if you know or not, I'm also on TikTok. I share a lot of the Amish stories, my experience growing up and what the rules were like. Anything to do with Amish, and also teaching out of the Bible. I love doing videos and talking about it.
Yeah, I don't usually use TikTok. So yeah, you've mentioned it though. You're on YouTube, Facebook too.
Yes.
Okay, so were any of your non-Amish friends when you left saved?
No, not the ones I was hanging around with at that time when I left the Amish. None of them were saved necessarily, but
Mm-hmm.
there was a cousin right in the middle of kind of a mess where I didn't know where I stand, kind of confused. Had went through a bankruptcy. Everything I've always done since I left the Amish kind of came came to a halt. And I had a cousin that kind of made the remark, "Hey, you should just read the Bible. I think it would help you." Even though he admitted later he wasn't necessarily reading the Bible, but he just that was his reply to me. Hey, you should just read the Bible and check out, see what the English Bible has to say. And that's exactly what I did. And then God obviously used that. I went through Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and in the middle of John, I got saved, and I never looked back.
Yeah. Um, so were you scared or intimidated of the non-Amish world?
No, not necessarily. I don't think I was ever. I mean, I had a little bit of a fear when I first left the Amish, just because of the unknown. There's a lot of things I had to learn.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that I was very intimidated a whole lot. But I just knew that if I was going to make it, that I have to do everything that I'm told to do. Because a lots of times I was very bullheaded and did it my own thing, and I did
Mm-hmm.
some of that when I first left. My buddies that helped me leave the Amish, they realized that I didn't always listen to them, and I thought I could drive a car when I cashed it off and not worry about insurance and tags, and I literally did that. And so I realized pretty quick that if I'm going to make it out here in the English world, then I better listen to their advice, because I literally got 21 speeding tickets in 5 years. So yeah, I wasn't getting anywhere very fast if I continued doing that.
They didn't take your license away?
Oh, I did. I got them suspended, and then I got
Oh.
pulled over. I got a ticket for driving under suspension.
Um, so are there any types of food that the Amish can't eat?
Uh, well, we were from our certain old order is different than a lot of other Amish. So I can speak for my community. They discouraged us from going to all these fast food places. They discouraged us from eating a lot of sugary foods, and that's
Mm-hmm.
also why we were not allowed to have pop. My family strictly forbidden pop in our family. We just wasn't allowed to have a lot of those things that was considered of the world. So going to Wendy's or Burger King or McDonald's, that was discouraged, because those were considered worldly foods and a lot of calories, and it was bad for you, we were told. Now, it did happen occasionally when we had drivers to take us different places. They would stop in there, and of course, we thought that was the biggest treat. That Wendy's burgers just tasted so good, but we were obviously discouraged from some of those worldly foods.
Yeah. So do you drink soda now?
Oh yeah, daily.
Yeah. What's your favorite kind?
Oh, Mountain Dew's my all-time favorite.
All right. It's got a funny color though. What is your role in Amish rescue mission? Did I say it right?
Yeah, yeah. Amish Rescue Mission is something that came along a couple of years ago, uh, operated and started by former Amish. I'm pretty much just joined in with them to see how I could help and what their mission was, and got involved, and it just took off from there. And I didn't think at the time that it was going to take off as much as what it has. But now we have so many former Amish.
Mm-hmm.
The beginning of it, I didn't think we had that many former Amish across America, but now as many as volunteered to help us, save houses, just volunteering to take somebody in that wants to leave, to helping them, counseling them, helping them, encouraging them along the way, coming from bad situations, has been enormous. And I've been really just blessed to see how God used their mission to help those that literally can't help themselves, and give a voice to those that don't have a voice, that were always silenced, because we were always told, obviously, to keep it hush hush in the Amish church. And so my position at Amish Rescue Mission is just taking calls. We've got a hotline now, and we allow those to reach out through their English drivers, or if they're sneaking around the phone on their Amish farms or community
Mm-hmm.
somewhere where they know that there's a resource. We don't force anybody to do something they don't want to do, but they already know that there is a resource and a way out rather than suicide, because that's one thing that that really has been on increase as of the last 6 months to a year is a lot of suicides happening in the Amish. And that's why our heart went out to them to try to let them know there is another way. There's hope, because the suicides sometimes just simply don't get reported in the Amish. My own father committed suicide. So that's why I really teamed up with them, because of my father, what he did, and then seeing a lot of others just ending it because they felt like, well, I hate my life. I don't want to live no more. And if I leave, I'm told I'm going to hell. So therefore they just eliminate themselves. It's really sad what's going on.
Yeah, it's very sad. Here's the last question. Has your old community changed over the years?
Well, they have changed, but they have changed maybe not what you would think they've changed. Lots of times the Amish have become more liberal. They get less rules to try and fix. And what's been going on is the younger generation started leaving. Some of them allow Rumspringen, which my old order Amish community does not. But the ones that do allow Rumspringen, where it's running around, he's at a certain age, they always have had people leave. They get to the teenage years and they've always left the Amish. There's even some TV shows that picked those up and did TV shows and such. But in my community, they were stricter, like the Trooper Amish. And instead of getting more liberal to try to fix the problem, they thought, well, we can fix it by getting more strict and enforcing more rules, and maybe that will prevent them from leaving. But all that causes more division, more power and control, where it kind of had the opposite effect. It shoved more out the door, and that's why we have so many in my area now that are leaving, because they get more clamping down on their life, more rules, watching them, and it's having a leash on somebody. And so therefore, I think there's more being shoved out the door rather than keeping them Amish because of the tight leash they have on them. So yeah, they have changed in my community by getting more strict, while some other Amish communities kind of turned and said, hey, you know what, let's loosen up on some of these rules and try to work with our young generation and teenagers to see if we can keep them in the Amish.
Okay. Were you Trooper?
Now, we did not label our community a Trooper, and they still today don't like being labeled that way, but the lifestyle itself and how our dress code was, everything literally matches the Trooper Amish. It's almost to a T. But for some reason, we were just called the Old Order Amish in Kenton, Ohio, and they didn't like using the Trooper name because they had some divisions with the Trooper. Even though their lifestyle was the same, they still didn't believe in tobacco, because some of the Trooper Amish would actually smoke tobacco, and my church was very against that. And that tobacco issue alone made them not want to be labeled as Trooper.
Oh, okay. So your community wasn't allowed to smoke?
No, they were not allowed to smoke at all. They said smoking any type of tobacco or chewing would be considered of the devil, of the world, and you couldn't please God with those things.
Yeah. Is that something you ever got into when you were?
Yeah, when I first left, are you asking if I got into it when I was in the Amish?
When you were leaving, kind of.
Yeah. When I left the Amish, I basically did everything. I ran from religion, and I hated religion. Quite honestly, I was very bitter for a long time, and that's why I just did my own thing. And I wanted anybody that mentioned Bible, Jesus, God, religion, I ran the other way. Just make it that way.
So, I'm just thinking of questions. What's your favorite food?
Oh, my favorite food, pizza.
Pizza? Okay.
Yeah, pizza has been something that I didn't have much. We had some English folks sometimes bring us a little bit, and we would fight over it. It seemed like they could never bring enough because it was just so cheesy and good. And now I can never get tired of the English worldly pizza.
Yeah, I like pizza. I had some for breakfast this morning.
I did too. A little bit
ago. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's it. We went through those questions pretty fast. Yeah. So do you have any other interviews planned with anybody?
I do different podcasts. I got one for Nashville. I got just people that want to interview me. I was on a radio show out of Los Angeles a couple weeks ago, but Some of them I turn down, just depends on my schedule, because I got a busy life going on. I try to, you just, sometimes you can't squish everything in. I try to help everybody. There's a lot of ex-Amish that reach out. I speak with them daily. It's been a pleasure speaking with so many of them that are either just recently left, or some of them are still in these communities of Amish, and they have seen me on YouTube, and they'll reach out, and I usually try to share my email so they can first start with the email, because there's also a lot of Amish that literally hate my guts because I'm talking about their way of life and exposing some of the darkness, the evil things that I experience. So I always make sure first I communicate a little bit with email, and then when I realize it's somebody that just needs encouragement, that wants to maybe leave or thinking about leaving, then we exchange phone numbers. So that has, over the last 2 years, increased to where I talk to several hundred of them per week. I'm a truck driver currently, so I speak with them on a daily basis. A lot of them are just wanting to know, will it please God if I leave? Because the deception is so great that it's hard to shake that off your shoulders, off your back, because that's all you knew all of your life. I experienced the same thing, and that's why I like helping these people. I left the Amish for 19 years. I can tell you that I lived it how I wanted to, because I thought, well, if I'm going to hell, I'm going to live how I want, because that's what I was taught. And I couldn't get rid of that until, again, 2017, when I read my Bible and I realized, well, wait a minute. I was lied to. There says nothing in the Bible about the Amish, but it talks a lot about Jesus is the only way to heaven. And when I found that truth out, that is why I like talking to those that are still in the communities that might feel guilty, that they're scared to leave. And I love to use scripture to prove to them, hey, look, this is what the Bible actually says. You're not going to hell if you leave and become a non-Amish person. So I love using the word of God to prove it to them. And that usually sets them free. And a lot of them, after they study it for themselves, they'll leave the Amish. And that's why our Bible studies are growing, because the last time we had a Bible study in Ohio here, they came from Southern Ohio, Pennsylvania, Iowa, New York. They came from Kentucky. They came from everywhere, because they are wanting to join together with others that know the truth as well, that have been through it. Because when they first leave, it's really, really hard to overcome the deception, because it's such a deep deception that since childhood, when the earliest memories you have, you're being taught that you have to be Amish in order to get to heaven. So to overcome that is an enormous obstacle. So I just love helping all of those that have those same problems, and help them through it until they're over the hump. Because some of them have went back. We have some of them that we thought were going to stay for good, and then all at once they go back because, well, they're confused, and they're not sure, and they obviously miss family, and that's going to always happen. There's families that you're going to miss your brothers, your sisters, your mom, your dad, and so some of them just simply go back. But I've also seen some go back and then leave the second time, because the lifestyle, just everything came back, and they just hated it, and so you just have a lot of confusion going on.
So about the bishops and the elders, do you think they actually believe what they're teaching?
Yes. Yeah. The reason they still do it and still enforce it so strongly is because they totally and 100% believe what they're teaching. Now, they actually believe that since the forefathers taught them that they must always keep what their forefathers taught, that is the most important thing to please God, because they believe the commandment in the 10 Commandments that talks about that you must honor your father and your mother. And it's the only 10 commandment with a promise that you would have long life and be blessed if you honor your father and your mother. So they take that commandment over all other commandments. When someone wants to leave the Amish, that's the only thing you continually will hear is, hey, you must honor your father and your mother. That's a 10 commandment. If you break that, you cannot please God. So they enforce that one literally. And the bishops and the preachers, when they preach right after someone leaves, for example, when I left that very next Sunday, they actually preached and used my name, Eli Yoder, is now going to be wiped out, probably in a car accident. God is going to basically curse him. He's going to die because he left what their forefathers taught him, and he broke that. He left. So now God is going to wipe him out. He's going to die in a car crash. Well, I'm now been English longer than Amish, and I'm still here. So it's just
Yeah.
the reason the reason I say that is because they teach this and preach this to the young generation. And unfortunately, a couple accidents have happened to some of the ones that have left. So they will really use those incidents to prove to the young generation, hey, look, this happened. That is what's going to happen if you leave. Now, recently we had a young man that was killed. He was not 18 yet, but he and a couple other teenagers had left, and they were killed in a car accident. Now, when the former Amish showed up for the funeral, they were told that they must sit all the way in the back. And when they were sitting in the back during that funeral service, they were actually preaching that this is what's going to happen when you leave. And those that are in the back row, and literally pointed them out, that those that are in the back row, they will also be taken out in an accident if they don't come back. And it was the most, some of the former Amish literally got up and left the funeral. They called me.
Yeah, that's sad.
Yeah, it was just a great deception that they were using, but they'll use these stories to enforce it onto the young generation, and fear itself can control them and make them stay Amish just because fear is there all of their life.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't know it was quite that harsh.
This is actually mainly in the old order Amish communities, because I also like to talk about the differences. There are now some new order Amish that they will literally take an old order Amish child, like the ones over in Eastern Ohio. They actually, there's a group that took a child that was killed and did a proper burial, because the old order Trooper Amish, they were going to bury this kid out in the field by themselves, no marking. And when the new order Amish found out about it, they took this child into their cemetery and did a proper burial. So it shows you the difference in the old order and the new order. Some of them are not as hardcore, and I always like to point the difference out, because I don't want to portray all the Amish as being that hardcore, that harsh, because there's a lot of good Amish out there that hate evil just as much as I do, and they want to do what is right, and they're willing to do the right thing.
So, was there a fight when they went to get the child, or how did that go over?
Oh, there's a couple of instances where there were fights. There was, in this particular case, there was not, but I can tell you a couple of them that they tried to take children away because an Amish man or woman, one of them, there's a couple that wanted to leave. And they came and literally physically removed the children. And they had to get the sheriff's department involved. And the sheriff's department came out and said, hey, that's kidnapping. You can't do that. But they didn't care about kidnapping, because they said, we can't have these children go to hell too. Their parents are already going to hell. They're leaving the Amish. So sometimes they will show up physically and try to remove someone. Now, in my particular community, which is a very old order, stands out from the rest, they will not even allow anyone from the former Amish to even be at the funeral, because they believe that if the tradition gets broken, that it's going to get out of hand, where the former Amish just come back all the time and they want to be part of the funeral and part of other events. So my mother, she made it very clear already. She says, when the day comes that I die, she says, I'm going to stick with my father, which was a bishop. His wishes were that nobody would come to the funeral, even if you're wearing Amish clothes. And so she told me, she said, when I die, you cannot come to my funeral. Okay. Well, we'll see when that day comes. I hope that day don't come anytime soon, but when it does, I'm going to put it to the test. I'm going to actually see which Amish are physically going to remove me, because that's just how I am.
Yeah. Are you going to get your brother to go too?
Well, I'm certainly going to try, and I'm hoping he will. He's now a police officer. And so I'm hoping that he's going to be willing to go out and face them. And I have a lot of buddies, by the way, that are willing to go with me, and we're going to test them. And I actually want to see if they're going to physically try to do something, or if they're just going to use like words. Hey, get out of here. You can't be here. If it's just words, I'll brush their shoulders and walk right on in.
Are you going to plan to wear Amish clothing, or are you going to dress normal?
I actually will wear Amish clothing, because when they do start coming up against us, that is one thing I'm going to point out to them. Hey, my mother always told me I can visit with Amish clothes on, and I have clothes on out of respect. So that way, if I do something that honors my mom, then I can use that against them when they try to tell me to leave.
Okay. So going back to the deceased baby, how did they talk to the Amish people that were going to bury it out in the field, or how did they get a hold of the body?
Yeah, they actually talked to the Amish about it, and lots of times they're not going to give in. There's many of them that have buried Amish family members in by themselves. I'm getting ready to put a video together where it's like a little square with one graveyard, one hole, one grave, and they put fence around it in the woods separately because he was killed in a car crash and he was not in the Amish ordinance. Because once you make an oath in the Amish, in baptism, you got to remain that way for life. And he actually had left and broke that oath. And so they buried him separately. But in most of those cases, yes, they do go out and they ask the family, they talk to the family, try to reason with them. And lots of times they just won't give in. They say, hey, this is our child. We're going to do it this way. And by the way, most laws, they're not even breaking the law when it comes to burying a family member on your own property without a regular cemetery. So, and I didn't realize that for a while. And I got involved in a couple cases when they tried to bury separately. And then I realized that when I contacted the sheriff's department, they actually had the right to do what they're doing, but it's ridiculous. It was like, yeah, I could put in my will, I want to be buried in my backyard back here. But this is for religious reasons. This is because you're condemning someone and saying, hey, they died a certain way. So therefore, they're not worthy to be buried with the rest of the people. That's the motive behind it. So there's a difference, and I try to point that out. But the sheriff's department told me in a couple areas that I just need to stay out of it and let the Amish do their thing. Okay, but I'll still make awareness and I'll still talk about it.
All right. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for coming on here. I do appreciate it.
Hey, no problem. Thank you very much for having me on.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody that's been watching and will watch. See you next time.
Yep. God bless.
All right.